Native American school that I felt like I had enough information to tackle this subject. And related to this, I want to go back to Verde Valley School. I mentioned I went to Hopi when I was 14 or 15 years old, and I was a punk rock kid from LA in this really strange environment. And I learned a story that really influenced my thinking in this book, and I want to share it with you because I think it's a profound and very important story, and it's one that needs to spread. And what it is when the Spanish came, the Hopi knew intuitively right away what they were about based on the image of the cross. Because when they saw the cross, they didn't know the story of Christ or the Bible. What they saw in the Christ was two lines, two angles. They saw engineering. They saw a very rationalistic mind. And they knew that the Spanish would be very good at construction and of material realm, of materializing their ideas into the world. But what they were scared about was the lack of a circle. They saw a cross but no circle. The tribal symbol for the Hopi was a circle with a cross. And the circle is what ties everything together. And I was going to show you some slides on my computer, but I don't have it with me. But if you look at the cross and the circle, you'll see that it's the medicine wheel. And so it's the four directions, but also it's a spiritual philosophy. It's the mental, the physical, the emotional. It has all these different components, which education tends to lack. And at the same time, I was reading a lot of McLuhan, and I think a really important book that everyone should read is War and Peace in the Global Village. And McLuhan talks about the way that the mind is divided and how different parts of the mind interact with different kinds of media. And so what I started to look at when I studied a lot of the followers of McLuhan is that the left side of the mind came out of alphabetic literacy. Or actually what happened was the left part of the mind developed alphabetic literacy and promoted it because it was very effective as a rationalization of thought, of reality, if you think about the phonetic alphabet, it divides all the sounds into discrete units. McLuhan liked to say the alphabet cannibalizes. You can turn anything into the Roman alphabet, which is what's happening in the world. English is a cannibalizing language. It's not only because the U.S. has been up to this point the most powerful economy in the world, but the English language has a way of converting very easily different concepts, different languages. And so this left brain mind also reminded me what the Hopi was saying about, they said that the right side of the body was evil. I don't agree with this term evil, but maybe this is a bad translation of the Hopi word for it. Because it was obsessed with material and with greed, and the left side, which is where the heart was more in line with harmony, with patterning, which correlates with the brain, because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. So I talk a lot about this in my book, and basically saying that print literacy is a left brain approach to the world. And so far, we've looked at media from a left brain point of view. We analyze it from an alphabetic mind. And I wanted to step back and say, well, let's look at media from the right side of the brain. Let's look at the patterning that's happening with media. And interestingly enough, new multimedia is very much more in alignment with the way that the right brain works. So if we take an agnostic approach to media, we can actually see that new emerging social media is bringing us more into balance with the right mind if we become aware of what's actually happening. So I wanted to draw awareness to it. So the right brain is about art, it's about imagination, it's about music, it's about insight. One cannot be excluded from the other, we need both. So I felt like the left and the right brain were really important to think about in terms of education. And all the models up to this point that I looked at were left brain models. They were industrial models. They're models of time management. They're models of industrial management. Buckminster Fuller talked about the school being like a factory with the bells. Every hour, you had your break, and you were set up this regimented educational experience. So I could go on about the left and the right brain and how that correlates with permaculture versus industrial thinking, but it's all in the book. I have lots of charts. You can see beautiful charts. I love to do these kinds of things for compare and contrast. But for example, I'm just going to read some general comparisons.
That's very left brain.
Yes, it is very left brain. And I talk about the irony of, I'm writing a book in a very linear, analytical fashion to talk about this stuff. And then the artist can, my sister Nicola is an incredible artist, and she talks about a lot of cool things in a much different way with art, which is equally valid. We can balance all this kind of stuff. But just to go over a really fast list, I'm using cross to represent left brain, circle to right brain. So the cross model of media would be industrial media. The image of the big tower, there's 4 media companies broadcasting to all these people. You're a passive audience, you're just receiving the information, there's no feedback. That's broadcast media since World War II. And in some ways, the media conglomeration that's happening with the multinationals consolidating media represents that to some extent. The circle, the right brain, the new emerging media environment is the network media. So you have the one-to-many, and now you have the many-to-many. Information flow in the cross left brain model it's push. It pushes you information. In the new media model, you're pulling information to you. The core emotion of old media is fear. I'm saying love because people, one of the patterns that's emerging about new media is this whole thing about fan culture. People do things because they love it. They're putting all this, uploading Wikipedia because they love what they do. It's a completely different kind of emotional force behind what is being put out into the world. The resources of mass media model is scarcity. The new media model is sufficiency. The ownership model of mass media is intellectual property, copyright. The new model is Creative Commons. The old form of analysis is objects and things, and the new form is design. And in some ways you could say the old form of representation is illusion, and the new one is magic. But magic could also represent an old way of thinking. So in a lot of ways, one of the great scholars that influenced McLuhan was a man who studied oral versus alphabetic culture. And he was saying that we're in a state of secondary orality, which means that we're actually going back to an oral culture in many ways, which I find to be a good thing. So the other thing I'll just mention really quickly is this idea of convergence culture. Henry Jenkins from MIT has written a lot about this. And what he observes these patterns in new media that are important to recognize. One is that collective intelligence is really important. And I think collective intelligence is what ecological design is all about. It's the knowledge of the community, of nature, of collectives of people. He talks about effective economics, again, which is doing things out of love, out of passion. Transmedia storytelling, telling stories across multiple platforms. And then participatory culture. So these are all important trends. And I think these are all things that are being left out and ignored from previous models and discussions of media. So the rest of my discussion was going to be about esoteric aspects of media literacy, which I won't get into.